Hello and welcome to the CircuitPython Weekly for March 2nd, 2020. I'm Scott and I'm paid by Adafruit to work on CircuitPython all the time. We have this meeting, CircuitPython is a beginner-friendly version of Python for microcontrollers, which are low-cost computers that cost like tens of dollars, so everybody can have them. CircuitPython is designed to make it really easy to get started with those projects. So most of its development is supported by Adafruit, so check them out at adafruit.com and support CircuitPython development that way. This is our weekly meeting where we get together as a community and discuss all things that are happening around CircuitPython. It happens every Monday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern on the Adafruit Discord server. Everyone is welcome to join in at adafru.it/discord. You can just go there and check it out. It happens in the CircuitPython voice channel and the CircuitPython text channel. It is being recorded. Carter, you're unmuted. It is being recorded, so beware that that is happening. Carter, can you mute, please? Thank you. The recording of this is posted to the Adafruit YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Adafruit, along with Diode Zone. Those videos have links to the note stock, which has time codes and is generally a great way to keep track of how things are going on in the video without listening to it all. It tends to run an hour, hour and a half now because we have lots of folks involved. The meeting is divided up into 5 parts. The first part is community news, which is a general overview of what's happening on the internet with CircuitPython. After that, we do the state of CircuitPython, its libraries, and Blinka. That is a more statistics-oriented, objective view of the world, kind of grounding us in metrics that we think are valuable. After that, we have hug reports, which is a chance for us to all say thank you to other folks for their work that they've been doing. We do this as a round robin, so I will start and then go down the list of the folks in the voice chat. If you are just listening in and don't want to participate, let us know you're lurking. Bonus points for checking the note stock to see that we've marked you as lurking as well. If you are text only, basically, please write your notes in the note stock, and I will read those off for those who are just listening in. And then lastly, if you want to actually unmute when you're called on, that's awesome. Just be aware that we are recording it and your voice will be posted. So yeah, that's hug reports. After hug reports, we have status updates, which is a chance for you to say thank you, or it's not. That's hug reports. Status updates is a chance to take a couple minutes to talk about what you've been working on and what you plan on working on in the coming week. It's a great way to just have an idea of what everyone is doing and give tips and tricks about the things that people are trying to accomplish. So that's status updates. Sometimes topics will come out of that might be a bit long. So just want to say that if you have things that you want to ask or discuss, let's save that for the last section. And the last section is called In the Weeds, which is where we can have those longer form discussions. And the goal is that those happen at the end. So folks who want to have an overview, ideally the overview itself is shorter at the start. So In the Weeds, the way In the Weeds works is if you have topics that you want to discuss that have come up, let's put them in the note stock and we'll list them off. And then we kind of just call on the people that have put notes in the note stock for the In the Weeds, and we'll discuss those. So that's the meeting. I think I covered everything. I will probably pause a bit as I take time codes, but time codes are really handy for the note stock. So I will take a time code and we'll hand it over to Phil for community news.
All right. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
All right. So for the folks who are responsible for 100+ employees or do events, or for me, I'm following all the different events that our community is part of in some way. So as of right now, PyCon just posted up. They're still on. PyCon's coming up in April, and they just posted up a blog post about any updates because there's COVID going on. I have to hand it to PyCon. They are always excellent at communicating with everyone. So give it up for them, because I know as an organization sometimes it's hard because you have a lot of people, you have to, get consensus, talk to people, but they're good on Twitter. They have a blog post. A lot of people are asking questions, and they have a resource. So good on them. So unless we hear anything different and PyCon's still on, we'll see some of you there. Later on in this meeting, I'm sure Scott and team will be talking about CircuitPython 5 release candidate 1. We have this in the newsletter. There's a blog post. Please test it, test it, test it, and test it, and then test it some more. With the 5.0 release candidate, we added some new boards to CircuitPython.org. We now have over 116 boards altogether. Some of the new ones, the Nano, doing a Nano 33 ROT, Circuit Brains Basic and Deluxe, Feathers, and a SparkFun CMD Thing Plus. We are still at the ratio of more non-Adafruit boards than Adafruit boards, so that's kind of cool. Next up, speaking of Adafruit boards, we have a new board. This is the Feather Bluefruit Sense. Hackster just did a post about it. I'm always interested in how you can use the word snake or feather or something in a headline, and they did it. Feather Bluefruit Sense takes flight, launches with full CircuitPython compatibility. Check that out. We had some over the weekend. We have another batch going in soon. For the folks who probably notice, we're very good at supply chain. We have things that change throughout the year. We also are smart about tariffs. And then, of course, there was a delay with Chinese New Year's and COVID. So some of our boards will be green for a little while. But that just means we can keep shipping hardware. All the rest of the PCBs are shipping, all of our providers, that they're all back. So that's kind of cool. But get the special edition green one next time it comes back and talk. If you're interested in hardware, and you probably are because you're here, Red Hat has a podcast, and it's called Command Line Heroes. And this month they're all about hardware, and one of them in particular is about open source hardware. They have Our Lady Ada in it, and she talks about all sorts of things like CircuitPython and more. So if you're into the podcast, this is a good one anyways, but subscribe to it. You'll probably hear about some more things in the open source hardware community in that podcast as well. Over on Twitter, I just saw this yesterday and got in the newsletter. Thea Flowers has this big honkin' button sampler, looking for feedback to see if folks actually want to buy it. Go hit Twitter and say that you do, if that's something that you want. This is a CircuitPython module synth. Next up, Tuesday of next week, March 10th, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m., we are doing an IoT Design Week event with Microchip. So it's Adafruit and the Wizard of Make, Bob Martin, will be talking about things like CircuitPython on PyPortal, CircuitPython on our NRFs, CircuitPython on the SAMD processors, CircuitPython everywhere, IoT, machine learning, and more. So check it out. I think they're giving away free stuff, and if you show up, you probably win something. I think I covered this last week, but I'm going to do it again because we got more information. Morgan Stanley has a makerspace program that someone, it's a longtime customer, and then their kid was a customer, and then the kid went through high school, now is an engineer, and then ended up doing all this stuff. Anyways, really amazing story, fantastic cause, and they use CircuitPython and Circuit Playgrounds to teach these kids coding skills in partnership with Women in Need, a group in New York City. And then last on the list, we are now accepted. We arrived. Discord has this discovery service. So if you scroll all the way to the bottom on the left-hand side inside Discord, which you're in, and hit the little magnifying glass and type Adafruit or Python or Raspberry Pi or electronics or DIY, we'll show up. It's very difficult to be in this list. I don't know why, but we hit every criteria after many months, and also after talking to them about this, because we said, hey, like, seems like we should be in this. And so we got accepted over the weekend. So I did a blog post, added it here. So check it out, make sure it works. If there's any updates, we will do them. I think the only way to find it is the text that we put in there, though. So I tried to put in some things that I thought people would look for. And much of this news, if not all of it, is in the newsletter. It'll go out tomorrow, 11 a.m. Check out the draft. If there's any pull requests, issues, anything that we missed, please add it there. And then you can also get it on Adafruit Daily. That's where the weekly Python on Hardware community newsletter goes out. And back to you, Scott.
Thanks, Phil.
Bye-bye.
All right. Next up, we have the state of CircuitPython libraries and Blinka. This is a chance to have an objective view of how the project is going. And if you think there are metrics that we don't cover here, please let us know what those are. We'd love to add some other things to it as well. I'll start off with just an overview, and then we'll go into some more specifics. So overall, We had 36 pull requests merged from 13 different authors. Um, some new folks I recognize in here are my techno talent, Foosmeet, are new folks. We had 15 reviewers, which I think might be a record. So let me just read off all 15 of those. That's an awesome number. So Foamy Guy, Sedacious, Hot Tack, Higher Effect, Maker Melissa, Katney, Jerry, Jeff Epler, Brent Rue, D. Harada, Lady Ada, Summersoft, Carter Nesson, Dan Halbert, and myself. Thank you. We had more reviewers than authors. Every week, we like to remind folks that reviewing is a great way to get started. Jump into an existing pull request and say, hey, I tried this. It looks good. And that's very, very helpful. If you need help doing that, let us know. We're happy to point you to resources. So that's PRs. Issues wise, we had 12 closed issues by 6 people and 11 open by 9 people, which again, we tend to have more open by more people. So if you want to help with issues, let us know as well. But we're net down 1, which is good. Overall, Dan's been rocking out release candidates for 5.0. We're getting super close, and I think we should talk about that in the weeds a bit more. But that's been going great. The libraries have been going great, and Blinka as well. All parts of CircuitPython land seem to be growing at a steady rate, and it's all of those aspects seem to be building on the principles of making things really easy and documenting them well and making sure that the community is inclusive. So thank you to everyone who's involved in that. Let's go on to a bit more detail about the core, which I will talk about. We had 19 pull requests merged from 3 different authors and 8 reviewers, which again is awesome and interesting. So thank you to both the authors and reviewers on the pull requests. We really appreciate seeing that iteration. We have 13 open pull requests. A few of them are quite old. 2 of them specifically are over 200 days old, but a number of them are fresh out of the oven. So thank you to everyone who's done that. Issues wise, we had 0 closed issues by 0 people and 3 open by 2 people for a total of 251 open issues. We have 8 active milestones. I'm not going to go into details about that. And we now have core download stats available at circuitpython.org/stats. And I'm actually just going to take a look at that because I haven't looked at it yet. And maybe my browser doesn't like me loading the Ajax. Doesn't work. Okay, thank you. So yeah, there's a link there and it will work in the future. Thank you, Summersoft, for the real-time update and working on that, of course. So with that, let's kick it over to Katney for an update on the libraries.
Thanks, Scott. So in the libraries, we have had 17 pull requests merged over the last week from 11 authors and 11 reviewers. Of those 11 authors, the 2 new people that you pointed out earlier, My Techno Talent and Foosmeet, are both included. So thank you to everybody who wrote up PRs and everyone who reviewed. In our list of merged PRs, we got to one that was 190 days old, which is excellent. And the rest of them, of the 27, or rather, of the ones that we merged, were all within either a week or 1 day. We have had 12 closed issues by 6 people and 8 open by 7 people, leaving us with a total of 27 open pull requests and 148 open issues. All that information is available on circuitpython.org/contributing. As well, available on that same, or on circuitpython.org/libraries is information about the libraries over the course of the last week. And in terms of updates, we had, let's see, 1, 2, 3 new libraries, which is excellent, and a number of updated libraries, which is also excellent. In terms of contributing, circuitpython.org/contributing has a lot of information, including open pull requests across all the libraries, open issues across all the libraries, and library infrastructure issues, which are basically, we have a sort of standard we wish to keep all of our libraries adhering to. And when we have libraries that are not up to that standard, we try to keep track of that using our Adabot script. And all that information is posted there. Some of those are excellent first issues, renaming files, that sort of thing. So if you're looking to get started, circuitpython.org/contributing is the best place to go. Take a look at what's there, see whether there's anything you can help with. If you need any assistance with getting started with Git and GitHub, we have a guide, and we are also always available either on GitHub or on Discord in the CircuitPython channel to help you get started with that. And that's where we are with the libraries.
Awesome. Thank you, Katney. All right. Next up, we have Melissa talking about Blinka.
Hello. So I'm going to talk about Blinka, which is our CircuitPython compatibility layer for Raspberry Pi and other single board computers. In this last week, we had 5 pull requests merged by 3 authors and 1 reviewer. There are 0 open pull requests at the moment. There were 2 closed issues by 2 people and 1 open by 1 person. There are 33 open issues at the moment, and there have been 1,946 PyPI downloads in the last week, and we currently are supporting 38 boards. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. And that is the state of CircuitPython, its libraries, and Blinka. Okay. Let me take a time code, and we'll move on to Hug Reports. As a reminder, Hug Reports is a chance for you to take a little bit of time and say thank you to folks for the work that they've been doing. It's a great way both to just take some time and thank folks, and it's also a great way for us to demonstrate to each other what we value. So please take some time and think about the things that you like to see that have been happening in the CircuitPython community. I will start, and then we'll go alphabetically in the list. As I said earlier, let us know if you're looking. Double check the note stock to make sure that it matches, whether you're going to unmute and speak, or I should read it off, or you're just lurking and I'll skip over you. So let me take a time code. For me, I wanted to say I was gone all weekend traveling, and I just wanted to say a quick hug report for Kate and Michaela, who met me, who work at Great Scott Gadgets and met up for lunch. That was really fun to see them in person. And then it was also great. Brian and Kirk at SparkFun hosted me, and we had a good discussion about CircuitPython and how that fits into the vision for SparkFun as well. Maybe it will in the long term. The short story is it doesn't right now. And then group hug. In general, I'm way behind on email and everything. But from what I've glanced through, it's just awesome to see how much can happen in just 4 days. I was basically out Thursday through Sunday, and it's just amazing to see everything that everyone is doing. So group hug, thank you all for continuing to move this whole big project forward and helping it grow more and more so quickly. Okay. TG Techie is wrapping up class, so I'll go to V923Z.
Okay, thanks, Scott. It's a great pleasure. This is really my first meeting. So this week I would like to hand out 2 hugs. The first should go to Scott for helping and fixing with the import issue in ULab. And actually, this turned out to be a great general enhancement in both CircuitPython and hopefully in MicroPython too. It concerns the fact how submodules can be loaded in CircuitPython. And the second hug should go to Jeff for reviewing code, fixing a number of bugs, and really setting up a terrific test suite for testing ULab and making the alignment with the NumPy behavior much easier. And so Jeff, I really appreciate this. This should be a bear hug if you wish.
Whoa. Introducing new types of hugs on his first meeting. That's amazing.
Next one.
Awesome. Thank you and welcome. Okay. We have Andrew. Do you actually have a mic?
I do actually have
awesome.
a mic.
Go ahead.
been a fairly quiet week for me so far as I get acquainted with editing libraries and such. So just a group hug to all.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. All right. Anecdata is lurking, but says text only group hug. Anne is lurking. Carter is lurking, but has notes. So I will read those off. Carter says, hug report to Dan for real-time chatting about BLE. A hug report to Lady Ada and Maker Melissa for fixing mini TFT feathering. Totally looked like a hardware issue that was actually software. Awesome sleuthing and fast fix. Next up, we have C. Grover, who's text only. C. Grover says, hug report to Katney for getting me out of some conceptual quicksand and sharing a new, to me, Python concept that will be incredibly useful from this point forward. Thanks. And let's go to Charles.
A group hug to everybody. I'm experimenting with the most recent release of 5.0, and it seems to be working for what I want, which is basically the MIDI USB. So thanks to everybody.
Great. Thanks, Charles. All right. Next up, we have Dan.
Okay. Thanks to Justin Cooper. He does a lot of web stuff for Adafruit, including the Learn Guide and many other things. So we wanted to switch the downloads of CircuitPython to Amazon S3. I'll have more about that in status updates. But I asked him some questions, and he basically just did the work in a couple of hours, and I was able to proceed forward and move where you download things from. That worked out really great. And he also investigated how to do set up logging so that we can get some statistics. Thanks to Summersoft and Jeff and Lady Ada for doing PR reviews over the weekend for things that I needed to get release candidate 1 set up and out. So that was really great. I was able to get it going on Sunday. And then thanks to MUBES or MUBES and Arturo for some i.MX fixes, particularly for I2C, which should make the 5.0 general availability on the i.MX boards be good. It's in sort of better shape than it was in RC.0. All right.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. All right. Dave P is lurking, so let's go to David Gloud.
Okay.
I heard you briefly, and now I can't hear you. All right. I'll read it off here. David says, hug report to Lady Ada and Peterone for the virus-related explanation in Ask an Engineer. A hug report to everyone helping with power-related issues on my Bit2Pi. And lastly, a hug report to Foamy Guy for the patchwork example. All right. And speaking of Foamy Guy, let's go to Foamy Guy.
Right. This week, I have got a hug for Maker Melissa. Right at the tail end of the meeting last week, they had pointed me to an old example in one of the Featherwing matrix libraries, and I was able to actually get that working pretty easily on the 16x8 too, so definitely appreciate that. And then for Katney as well, helping me work through some weird state that I got myself into with Git on a PR. And that's all I got for this week.
Awesome. Thanks, Foamy Guy. All right. Next up, we have Geek Guy. Do you have anything for us?
Oh, you're fine.
You're still unmuted.
Oh. No, nothing today.
All right. Thanks, Geek Guy. Okay, let's go to Hierophects.
Hello.
Hello.
So this week, thanks to Anne for their help on my Zephyr Learn Guide, which is now published up on the Learn website for anybody who's interested in getting started with that real-time operating system. And thanks to the Zephyr folks for being friendly and helpful this week, because we're adding the Feather F405 to Zephyr. Again, Zephyr is something that maybe will be related to CircuitPython in the future. It's currently ported to MicroPython, so I don't know, it's on the radar, and I've been doing a little bit of work in that. So thanks to those folks over there. They've been nice. And then a group hug to everyone here for the 5.0 work.
Awesome. Thanks, Higher Effect. Okay, next up we have Jacob T, who is text only, so I'll read it off. Jacob says, hugs to Carter and Don K for their support in the Help with CircuitPython Discord channel, and to Lady Ada and Maker Melissa for subsequent fixed library for the TFT with joystick featherwing. Yeah, and shout out, for those of you who don't know, we do have 2 CircuitPython related Discord channels. We have hashtag CircuitPython, which is generally more development focused. And then we have a whole series of help with channels, including a help with CircuitPython channel where folks can go for questions as they use CircuitPython. So next up, we have Jeff. Maybe I'll read Jason. I guess Jason's not in here. Sorry, Jeff. Let me read out Jason first. Jason says, hug report to Kattni for getting a shout out from Kojo Idris on episode 168 of the Python Bytes podcast about her upcoming PyCon tutorial. All right, now let's go to Jeff.
All right. Well, I want to give a group hug to everybody, and then a second hug to everybody who has contributed to CircuitPython 5.0. And I think there's a pretty big overlap there because everybody has pitched in something at this point. And I didn't write it in the notes doc, but I'd better return that hug to Zoltan. So there's one for you. It remains a pleasure to work with you, and it feels like we're getting so much done. Even though the pull request in CircuitPython hasn't gone in, so much good stuff is going on. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next up, we have notes from Jerry, who wasn't able to make it. Jerry says group hug. And after Jerry, let's go to Kattni.
All right, so I have a hug report for Dan for helping me choose an error type to throw. Sometimes it's pretty clear on what should be thrown when we are raising exceptions. Other times it seems arbitrary. So I'm always looking for help with expanding my knowledge of the best options there. A hug report to Maker Melissa for helping me get my code working like I intended it to but failed to sort out on my own. Was working through some what I consider to be fairly complicated stuff and had a final image in mind, but couldn't quite figure out the middle bit. And Melissa helped with that. And then I want to give a huge hug to Foamy Guy and Anecdata for joining the new CircuitPython helpers role on Discord. They both were already helping all the time in help with CircuitPython and the CircuitPython Discord channels. And just like we highlighted those that have really been helping all over the Discord server entirely, I wanted a way to highlight those that have been helping a lot with CircuitPython. So I approached both of them. They gladly accepted, and now we have our new CircuitPython helpers role. So if you are looking for assistance with CircuitPython related things, they are, when they are available, will be there to help you out. And that's what I've got.
Awesome. Thank you, Kattni. All right, KJW is lurking, so let's go to Maker Melissa.
Hello. Let's see here. Oh, I'm in the wrong section here. The doc. Okay.
So hug reports.
Yes, I realized that, and I was on status stuff, and I knew that was wrong. So I wanted to give a hug to Lady Ada for helping point me in the right direction for the mini TFT Featherwing, because that was kind of eluding me for a while. Then I was able to fix it like really quickly. And a group hug to everyone who's kind of been waiting on me while I've been heads down working with Web Bluetooth.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Certainly is lurking. And SDW is lurking. So Summersoft is text only, and I'll read that off. Summersoft says, hug report to Dan and Justin Cooper and whomever else behind the scenes that planned and implemented the move to AWS for core firmware delivery. Hug report to everyone contributing to additional ports. I've been on the periphery lately and mostly lurking, but it's great to scroll through all of the bits and watch it happen. And lastly, a group hug from Summersoft. And I believe that is it for hug reports. Thank you, everyone, for hug reports. Let's move on to the next section.
I have one.
You do?
I do. Sorry for the late drop-in.
No worries. Go ahead.
A hug to you, Lieutenant Scott, for our after-meeting chat last week. And a hug to the community for always being so supportive, even when the problem is just yourself.
Awesome. Thanks, TG Techie. All right, and let's move on to status updates. Status updates is a chance for us to talk a little bit about what we're working on, kind of like what you did in the last week and what you're doing in the coming week. And if there's any sort of longer form discussion, please drop a note about it in the weeds section, which is the next section up, and the final section as well. So I will start as an example, although some folks are way more in depth than I usually am. And then we'll go from there. So. And I should also say, again, if you're lurking or text only, please just double check the note stock next to your name so that we know where we're going with this round robin. So first, I can't remember much that I did last week because I spent the last 4 days in Colorado skiing and seeing some friends get married and enjoying some hot tubbing and all things that are not work, which is great. I did actually go on... I did do some work stuff on Thursday because I was in Colorado, so I met up with Kate and Michaela from Great Scott Gadgets, and we chatted about what they're working on, FPGA stuff and USB stuff. And then from there, I went and visited SparkFun outside of Denver as well, which was really neat. So thank you to Kirk and Brian again for meeting up with me. The high level is that, you know, it gave a lot of background about CircuitPython and why we're a community and why we run the project as we do. Kind of give them pointers on how to kind of lurk on that community. And then the general gist was that they are not, they're working on something else big that they're excited about, and they don't have cycles right now to do CircuitPython, which is totally cool. And I think we should continue as we are supporting their boards as they come out with chips that we support already. That's just the last week. Today is a catch-up day. I've been without a computer for 4 days, so there's lots of email and everything to get caught up on. I will help with any bugs that come up for 5.0, but it seems like it's pretty good. And so play that by ear. My main item is going to be looking at sleep on the NRF this week. Because I was doing all that broadcast net support in the last few weeks, I've just kind of seen that like the sensors don't run that long, and I would like to kind of just take some time and do the first pass on making the sensors a bit more power smart. So I plan on doing that this week, taking a look at it. Next thing on my list, I think, is BLE MIDI, which would be cool too. And then lastly, I just wanted to say I was planning on going to Open Hardware Summit next Wednesday, but I'm going to skip that because I've been traveling and there's this COVID-19 going around, and it's actually in the Seattle area here as well, and they're not doing a great job detecting it. So because I can go to New York whenever, basically, I've decided that I can decide, or I don't need to go now. I can always go later in the year. So if you're hoping to sync up with me there, remember we can always chat online. I'm always open. Just snag me, and I'd love to talk with you. So I hope everybody stays healthy and makes the right decision for themselves. So that's me. Let's go to TG Techie.
A lot of progress. So may or may not have mentioned before, I'm working on a wristwatch that is CircuitPython based, and NRF 52840, so Bluetooth and CircuitPython based. And just this morning, at like 4:50, it booted on for the first time with screen, touch screen, battery, USB-C charging, and USB in the final enclosure. And it's pretty rough. Not all the circuitry is quite done, and the software is functional but not complete nor organized well. But it keeps time, and I wear it, and people don't notice that it's homemade, so it's awesome.
Neat.
And for the next week, I will be working on making the software organized and sane, as well as documentation and testing the rest of the circuit.
How big is the battery in it?
It's a 350 milliamp hour battery. I can post images of it if that's helpful for sizing, because it's
Is it working all day for you?
It booted up this morning, and I've been programming it ever since, so it's been charging since then.
Okay.
I don't know. I will tell you next week.
Yeah, I'm curious. I should be able to make it a bit better for you.
I'd love, and if there's to do that, if there's a way I can help, assist there, please.
Yeah, you can be on the bleeding edge with me.
Anytime.
Awesome. Thanks, TG Techie.
Thank you.
Let's go to V923Z.
Okay, thanks, Scott. So last week I made an attempt at reorganizing the internals of Microlab, and in particular I implemented a new data container structure. I would really like to bid farewell to the MP object array, because without that we could get away cheaper in RAM. So I had to implement a couple of array creation and manipulation functions, and on top of that, I am done with the NumPy view methods, or the re-implementation of NumPy view methods. So for those who don't know what they are, in NumPy, if you ask for an array which was previously created, then in certain cases you don't get the array, you get a pointer to the array, which has the benefit that you don't have to recreate it, so it's faster and it doesn't consume RAM beyond the description of this view. So I am done with that, and this week I would like to sort out the issues with the binary operators. It's actually not difficult. It's a bookkeeping problem, and what makes the whole situation a bit difficult is the treatment of broadcasting. But I think I am getting there. So I hopefully can iron out all these issues this week, and then we can see where we can get from there. So that's from my side.
Great, and thank you all your work for Microlab.
Not at all. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. We're excited to have it in CircuitPython.
Me too.
Yeah, we'll make a big splash about it. For those of you who don't know, I think our plan is to do 5.1 as our Microlab release, so it'll be a headline feature, which will be cool. All right, let's circle around and go to Andrew.
Yeah, so last week I managed to get a library for the AS3935 lightning detector up and running. It's basically just a little lightning sensor that I've had for honestly years now at this point, back when I was involved in Arduino. Was looking around for a CircuitPython library, and the only one I found was more Raspberry Pi based. So there were a few improvements and kind of stuff that needed to be changed around before it could even run. So that was a good tester and kind of getting my feet wet and making changes to and supporting an actual CircuitPython library. Testing it has been a bit of an issue though, because as you can imagine, getting a hold of Lightning is kind of complicated. So that's been kind of this week, trying to test that, and then next week will be just continued testing of that, and then trying to jump into the GitHub repos to help support different libraries that there are having issues. And then, as always, just help with the CircuitPython group.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Yep.
All right. Anecdata Ann and Carter are lurking. C. Grover is text only, so I'll read that off after taking a time code. C. Grover says, made progress on a clock builder helper library after encountering a couple of sticky issues. See the quicksand above. Back on track to wrap up 3 chronometry-based projects by the end of the week. Testing 5.0 RC1 on some old M4 based projects, going to leave the M0 projects as is. So far, the only hitches were in some PyPortal weather station code. Expect those to be pretty easy to fix. In the future, as an excuse to learn about BLE, planning to evaluate it as a replacement for an existing low bandwidth RFM69 telemetry link between the workshop and the studio. Awesome. Okay, next up we have Charles.
Well, I finally received my drawbar B3 drawbar rack. Somebody had one for sale, really dirt cheap, and it seems to, from what I can tell, it seems to be working fairly well. So now all I have to do is figure out how to wire it to either a Grand Central or something, so that I can actually use the data into my MIDI setup. So that's where I am.
Awesome. Excited to hear about that every week. Thanks, Charles.
You Scott will appreciate what I'm doing, trying to do anyway.
Yeah, putting MIDI in an old organ, right?
Well, no, I'm trying to emulate a B3, right. An old Hammond B3, using Sunvox and some hardware add-ons.
Right. Cool.
And I'm hoping it works. Hoping I can get the drawbars to work easily.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're making a lot of good progress.
Yeah, it's painfully slow because I can only work on it so much, very little time at a time. So.
Oh yeah, I can relate to that.
Have a good day.
Thanks, Charles. All right, let's go to Dan.
Okay, so last Wednesday I released release candidate 0 of CircuitPython 5.00 because we squashed the bug list down to 0, the issue list down to 0 at that point. It took a long time for that release to be available for download because a bunch of the uploading jobs failed for various random reasons. And so I had to run it 3 times, and then I still had to upload 50 assets by hand, which was totally painful. So I said, let's forget this. Let's just change CircuitPython.org so it downloads from Amazon S3 storage buckets. And that was easy to do. I asked Justin Cooper about that. And the main issue was we were worried about trying to be able to get statistics about download counts. And it turns out there is a mechanism for that in Amazon Web Services. There's CloudFront logging, and we can use that for that purpose. So I asked Justin about it, and he just said he set it up, and in a matter of a few hours. And so it's already changed over. The downloads in CircuitPython.org are downloading directly from S3. We don't have the statistics yet, but we can do that at our leisure. And I had to also make some changes inside the CircuitPython repo for this also. So I went ahead and decided I would do an RC.1 on Sunday and pulled in a few other changes that have to do with the i.MX boards to fix mainly I2C. And so I released RC.1 on Sunday, and we can think about turning that into the general availability release soon. And we'll talk about that in the weeds. So upcoming, there's the release. And then I'm going to clean up the GitHub release pages because we have a bunch of releases with like 1,700 assets. And when you go to the releases page, it takes many seconds to load, which is a pain. So I'll clean that up. And then after post 5.0 release, I've got a bunch of work to do on the UF2 bootloader. And we'd like to do yet another BLE project. We have some BLE thermometers, some cheap ones from Amazon, and they seem to all be the same. So we have to reverse engineer those in order to figure out how to talk to the sensors, but it looks like it'll probably be straightforward. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. All right. Dave is looking, so we'll go to David Gloud, who's text only. David says, last week discovered watch style hard case for microbit is not compatible with Clue. Maybe Adafruit needs to build a list of working/non-working accessories. First bit to pi usage with NeoPixel from Unicorn Hat and Fat from Pimeroni. The link to the Twitter status in the docs. Next, failed to control two screens in CircuitPython, the clue internal and the MiniPy TFT 1.3, which via the bit2py. Wanted the first dual screen clue. I forgot to ask Maker Melissa to know if there was even possible with display IO. Some folks have take a look at the monster mask for that because there are two screens there and people have figured out how to use them both. There is actually a compile setting because screens take up space regardless of whether you're using them. And something we could tweak further down as well. And next week, David says, solder my Ada logger featherwing and find a CR1220 to go on it. All right. Thanks, David. Next up, we have Foamy Guy.
So last week I had I created some text examples, or really repurposed some older text examples, and got them working with the HT16K33, the 16x8 LED matrix. I also published just last night the first version of the Bluetooth patchwork demo for the clue. I did over the weekend assembled a PN532, which is like a NFC and RFID reading breakout board, and started working on one of the older, less lower priority issues that's on that library. And then I reviewed a PR for the ESP32. And then the last thing I did last night was test out an issue that somebody reported in Discord that they were having with the Feather Cricket when it was driving NeoPixels. They were having some trouble with brightness, so I got some good testing in on that last night. I think I understand the issue. I just need to pull together a self-contained example and get an issue created for that. And then, so coming up next week, I've got on my plate so far, it's looking like I need to solder together some TLC 59711s, little LED PWM drivers, and work on one of the issues for that library as well. And then I'm going to hopefully get started on a learn guide for the tile game that I was working on, as well as documenting the process for making bitmaps. I notice like display.io, it only supports the indexed bitmaps, and sometimes people have trouble figuring out exactly how to do that and how to manipulate the color map and all of that stuff. So I'm going to get that documented. And then lastly, I want to get the patchwork demo. There's a couple low-hanging fruits for improvements, and I also want to get it tweaked to work on the Circuit Playground Blue Flute with the gizmo, because it should be pretty straightforward to get it working on that device as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Foamy Guy. Okay, next up we have Geek Guy.
Greetings, everybody.
Greetings.
I've been working really hard on my little red robot, and it's almost ready to go active. I had to sacrifice the IMU, though, because I couldn't get it fitted on the robot. But I'm waiting to make up one cable for power for the motors, and then it'll go active, and I'll start writing some serious behaviors for it. So it'll be mobile then, and it's all CircuitPython, all Adafruit. That's really all I have.
Awesome. And if you have a link to write up about your robot, that would be cool too.
All right, I'll do that. Thanks.
Thanks, Geek Guy. All right, let's go to Hierophect.
So this week, past week, I worked on my Zephyr Guy, which is done now. Yay. And I also worked on the Pulse Out library for the STM32, which ended up taking a little bit of is pretty much all done now, so that's up as a pull request. Up this week, I started on Pulse In, which is the corresponding part for Pulse Out. Those two libraries are used for IR transmissions on boards like so. Good for emulating things like a TV remote. I also did some research on the F7 and the H7 boards, which I'm hoping to get spun up on real soon here. Pretty excited about the capabilities of those, and I'm just reviewing the MicroPython differences, how they handle the differences between those and the F4 series, and how I can set up the infrastructure to allow those to work alongside our code for the STM32. So this coming week, I'm going to be wrapping up Pulse in, getting started on Rotary IO, which is the encoder library. And then I'm just going to be hopping into the F7 and H7 stuff in depth. So looking to add the Nucleo boards for two kind of common Nucleo, STM32 Nucleo boards for the F7 and H7. Working on the infrastructure to support from the F4. They're totally pin mapped, so they're the same in terms of pins as their F4 alternatives, but they do have a bunch of different kind of things and different. Probably all of the modules that going to be working on that this week, and hopefully have some really, really fast, really, really huge CircuitPython boards supported in the near.
Right.
So that'll be exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited. John Park just linked to me to a synthesizer board that's an H7. So
yes, yeah. So that's actually important. So if anyone has F7 or H7 boards that they would like to see supported, there's things because there's a lot of them. There's some like the OpenMV Open Machine Vision project is on an F7. I know there's a lot of others out there. I don't know them all. So if anybody has boards that they would really love to see implemented, send them to me so they can be on my radar, and I can think about those in terms of prioritizing what gets into that port, because I'd really love to hear about any STM32 port or board that you want to see supported, but especially the F7 and H7s as we move into those, because I don't really have a super set priority list right now. So yeah, that goes for everybody.
Cool.
All right, thanks a bunch.
Yeah, that's great call to action. Good to get ahead of it. Okay, Jacob T's lurking, so we'll go to Jeff.
Hello again. I have a pretty long list from last week, so I'm just going to hit the highlights. Have some PRs out. Did some improvements to ULab, and I was particularly happy to get a set of bugs around slicing fixed. So now slicing behaves the same whether you've got a list or a ULab array, or when you go onto CPython when you have a NumPy array. And I also created a port for SparkFun 7051 thing plus. Somebody else, I think SparkFun staff had started that, but they got stuck, and so it was pretty easy to just finish it up. And also in the there's a guide for the prop maker that creates a lightsaber, and we had a bug reported by multiple users that the audio would glitch. It was worse in version 5 of CircuitPython than 4. An updated WAV file, we believe, fixes those problems, so we got that into the guide. This week, I'm going to work on any 5.0 tasks that I can pitch in on, and then hopefully 5.0 goes out the door and we can get ULab merged and that import stuff merged. I'm outlining and maybe starting on a ULab guide to go on the Learn website, and this process might identify additional functionality that Adafruit would like to see added or that I would like to see added.
Mm-hmm.
And so another call to action, do you know of a CircuitPython modular program that processes a bunch of numbers in a list? Mention me on CircuitPython, and let's see together if we can use ULab to improve it. And then I've got a caveat, which is if it is going to be used under Blinka, ULab isn't Blinka compatible, so that's going to require some extra thought.
We can import NumPy as ULab, right?
Yeah, right up until you hit those differences.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've got things that we could do. We could make a thing that is called ULab and imports and reorganizes NumPy to be more similar.
Right.
Kind of the reverse of what we've talked about doing, but that's not done yet. Someday we'll have to do something.
Cool. There was one other thing I was going to say. I can't remember what it was. Oh, we don't need to wait on ULab for 5.0 to actually get out the door because I believe we're branched already.
Okay. Well, we can talk about that soon then.
Yep. Yeah.
See you on the PR for review with comments.
Yeah, I should be able to get to it today. It's just backlog. Cool. Thanks, Jeff. Let's go to Jerry, who made it late to the meeting.
Yeah, if I can just find the unmute button. Yeah, sorry about missing the meeting, but most of it. Yeah, not a whole lot to report. If I can find my notes, I can do them. Where'd they go? So yeah, found and fixed a little minor issue that came up with the Bluefruit SPI library. Just stumbled across it. It was a trivial little thing, but it's fixed and it's now compatible with 5.0. And then it's spent a lot of time working on this RFM9X69 stuff and losing what little hair I have left. And I'll do more of that next week. But it's slow slogging at this point. I'm still not quite sure where I'm going.
Yeah, don't let it kill your desire. Don't let it.
No, it's not. It's if anything, it's actually enhancing it. I'm just trying to figure out what direction to go with things, and no, it's good, but it is frustrating.
Yeah.
Because I keep thinking it should work,
right,
and it does for a while, then it doesn't. So it's good. So yeah, next week I'll get back to seeing if I find some other things to break too. So
cool,
lots of fun.
Yeah, and if you ever need somebody to bounce the ideas off for the RFM69 stuff, just snag Dan or I or Jeff or whatever.
No, I won't be shy.
Cool. Thanks, Jerry.
Yep.
All right, let's go to Katney.
All right, so last week I was tasked with creating a badge example for the clue using PyBadger, which I previously refactored to include support for clue. And then decided that the base example wasn't enough because I wanted the ability to add a preferred pronoun. And the hello, my name is badge is very specific. You can edit the text, but you can't move it. You can't do a whole lot with it. So I added a custom badge feature to PyBadger where basically you have full control over the background, the colors. You can do like a color block background like you can with the hello, my name is badge, or you can use a bitmap as a background. And then you can display lines of text over it, and you have control over those lines of text, location, size, and you can use custom fonts. And then once that was all written, I did a custom badge example for Clue. Then I wrote a guide page for it and was asked to turn it into a full guide. So move the guide page into a new guide and spread it out accordingly. That involved going through it and making sure everything can be standalone, because obviously when it's in its own page, everything doesn't need an intro. But now it does. So I'm really happy with how the badge turned out. We're Adafruit and DigiKey are sponsoring PyCon, and every attendee is getting a clue. And so we wanted to put together a simple badge example for it so that people have, if all they want to do is display a name badge, it's available and easy to do. And because I wanted to make it more extensible, that's how all of this ended up happening. So this week I need to finish up that guide. It needs a final review to make sure that I actually gave everything the intros that it needed, and also needs better images and more of them. I still need to update the ESP, I think it's actually 8266, Huzzah schematic on GitHub, and on the guide, the current schematic that is posted has a problem in it that can let you cause some serious problems and break things. And so we want to get the new one up, the new rev that fixed that problem, and get that in both of those places. So I need to update that. That's the first thing I'm going to do. And then I'm also working on the guide for the Feather NRF 52840 cents, which will have pinouts, overview, downloads, all the fun stuff that a product guide has. And we'll also have a CircuitPython example that uses all of the sensors and simply prints out the data. So at that point, obviously you can expand on that. But if all you want to do is just get the data from the Feather, we got you covered. So that is the current plan. Eventually, I want to revisit the way that I wrote the custom badge feature for PyBadger. At the moment, you can't update it on the fly. So you generate it before the loop, and then you can call it in the loop, but you can't change it. and it's just that's how it got refactored. That's how it ended up written. And if all we're doing is using it for a badge example, it's not a problem. But I see it as also being able to be used to be able to put text over a bitmap, or use it for displaying data or something like that. Not really what PyBadger was meant for, but I feel like there's a way to make that work that isn't super complicated. I could be totally wrong, but I feel like that's the case. So it's something I want to revisit once I've gotten through other things and have a little time. So that's going to be on the ongoing list of things, is to try and make that even more custom than it already is.
All right.
That's what I got.
Thanks, Caddy. All right, KJW is lurking, so we'll go to Maker Melissa.
Hello. Let's see. Let's scroll here. Okay. Last week I was heads down with Web Bluetooth and developing a sensor dashboard. I did come up with a little bit and fix the mini TFT Featherwing, and I updated some missing boards on the CircuitPython.org website. I also added the Bluefruit Sense Feather to the Web Bluetooth dashboard. This week, I plan on finishing up that dashboard and working on starting to write up a guide for it. I need to go through one of the Raspberry Pi TFT guides and make sure it's still working because the user reported it wasn't. And I need to add some new boards to the Blinka page on CircuitPython.org. And that's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa.
Yeah.
Next up, we have notes from Marius, 450. So I'll read those off. Marius says, last week, worked to improve the turtle library, some low-hanging fruits, some fixes. First draft of a translated turtle to French. Ask me if you want to test before I try to PR that. And got a Circuit Playground Bluefruit plus TFT gizmo generating a Mandelbrot fractal. Thanks, Marius. Mr. Certainly and SDW NJ are lurking. So we'll wrap up the meeting with Summersoft, who is text only. Summersoft says, last week on Adabot, disabled core download stats from the daily report. With the GitHub API not working and the transition to AWS as the CDN, it didn't make sense to continue attempting it. Did some cursory research on how to implement the stats and metrics with the move to AWS. Looks like the AWS Python library, Bodo 3, should be able to interface with CloudWatch to get relevant info. For Rosie Pi and PhysicCI, got HTTP signature authorization working on both PhysicCI construction and node server verification. This adds another layer that allows PhysicCI and Rosie Pi to securely send and receive push notifications. Keys roll every hour. But of course, as soon as I got the final piece debugged last night, Azure Functions service started having issues. This week, get PhysicCI's Azure fixed if it's beyond a simple fix or a service reestablishment on Azure's side. Verify push notifications are working, then move focus back to actually running tests on the Raspberry Pi. Further research, Adabot using Bodo 3 for core metrics. All right, that's it from Summersoft. And that is it from everyone for status updates. So thank you all for hanging in there and asking or letting us know what you're working on. Next up, we have In the Weeds, which is a kind of free-for-all section for us to talk about what's going on in CircuitPython land. If you have topics you'd like to talk about now, please make sure that they're in the note stock in the Weeds section at the bottom, and I'll just go through those until we're out, and then wrap up the meeting, and we'll be good. So let's start off with V923Z.
Okay, thanks, Scott. So I just wanted to raise two questions. One is about exceptions at the sea level. Mm-hmm. What is required for a proper cleanup? Is it okay if one frees up the resources? So, for example, if I have a dynamically allocated array, I freed it up and then step out of the function, or is something else still required?
You shouldn't actually. Anything you've allocated on the heap, you can just get rid of your reference from and rely on garbage collection later.
Right, but I think. Okay, right. So the second question is if anyone could comment on performance differences or impact between stack and heap. So in particular, the question is about the description of an ND array.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a string in the memory and you have to describe it how you read it out, and for that you need at least 3 numbers, or actually a number and 3 arrays. The first number would tell you the dimension, and the second 2 would tell you what the shape and the strides are. And now the question is, can those two, these latter two, be dynamically allocated, or should one put it in on the heap? Is there a significant penalty when we have it on the heap versus having it on the stack?
So I think for these two examples, you're going to end up... So all of the objects that MicroPython has are going to end up in the heap anyway.
Okay.
So regardless of whether NDA array has 2 pointers in it or not, it's going to end up on the heap.
Okay.
The difference is that you'll have either one or more objects on the heap. So the first one where you have 2 pointers, you're going to end up doing 3 allocations, right? 1 for the main object, and then 2 for the sub objects.
Right.
And those allocations only get as small as 16 bytes. So that's one thing to think about. Is whether, and then you're always paying for the indirection, right? Like to read it a second time.
Right.
So I would generally do the latter thing where you have one object that's just bigger.
Right, but that's more expensive in terms of RAM, because you have to reserve space for the largest imaginable array. Right. I mean, not the array. I'm talking about the dimension size.
Right.
So if you say that you want to work with 8 dimensions, then this shape or strides objects is going to be always 8 or whatever your dimension is.
Yeah.
So the question is whether that's worth it. Or if you say that we should work with that, then what is the highest reasonable dimension that one should care about?
Right. You're going to have a much better idea about that. I think there's a good argument to have them be dynamic because then it works regardless. But then again, it's slower.
Right. It's also an extra step because you have to allocate it. So that's also an extra step in the code itself.
Right. The only feedback I would really have is just you could make sure that the ND array object, if you choose a maximum dimensionality, would just align to that 16 bytes. Like the GC is going to allocate on 16 byte blocks, so you could take that into account.
Okay. All right. So then,
but it's up to you.
One way to look at this, Scott mentioned that it allocates a minimum of 16 bytes. Okay. So if in the version with pointers, if you've got 4 bytes for the pointer to shape, and then 16 bytes for the shape, that's also enough room to store 5 dimensions directly in the object. Right. So it's only when you anticipate going beyond 5 dimensions that you would potentially save storage by moving them out.
Right.
Okay. Right. Well, then I think that's a very clear answer. So
I did also play a trick in some of the display stuff where I actually pack data into the pointer if it's short enough. Whereas like if you're only 2 dimensions, you have a pointer, but you know the data is actually there rather than like allocated separately. So you could have a flag or something, or you could base it on n dimensions, whether it's a pointer or whether it's the data itself.
Right, that could be done. Okay.
It's a hack.
Another
but
trick
it's an option.
Is suppose that you put shape and strides into a structure of its own. So now you've just got one variable sized thing.
Right.
You put that thing at the end of the structure.
Yep.
And declare it as having 0 elements.
Right.
And then you actually allocate the one object oversized depending on the actual number of dimensions used. Then it's one allocation, it adapts to the number of dimensions that you actually have.
Yep.
Okay.
And
that sounds good.
That is done in MicroPython already, so it's not a new trick. I think tuples
do that.
Yeah, I think so.
Tuples, okay.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have In the Weeds from Foamy Guy.
Yep, I have noticed a couple people come through the help with chat rooms where they are pretty new to CircuitPython. They got like their first device or maybe their second device, and they're still trying to use the preloaded sample script. But as they get online and hit a learn guide or make it to the chat room or somewhere, they get encouraged to update to the newest CircuitPython, which is great because we want them to update. But then the preloaded sample script no longer works because some of it uses older APIs for some of the different stuff. I know HID is one of them. There might be a few others that need updated. Looking through the Essentials guide, it seems like everything is all updated in there. So it's just a matter of needing to go back into those larger demo scripts that do a little bit of everything and make the few tweaks that they need. I kind of wanted to just get an idea, well, first of all, to see if that's out there already and I just haven't found it, or if not, if there's interest in getting that done. I'm happy to tackle that, but I just wanted to kind of get it on the table and see what the thoughts were.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? The boards are flashed. If they already exist, we don't pull them all out of stock and reflash them. So there's often an overlap where there's a period of time where everybody then gets their board, say their trinket like you're suggesting here, and updates it to CircuitPython 5.0 or whatever the latest version is, and it doesn't work. There's a whole thing involved with getting the testers updated in terms of what's actually flashed to the boards when the boards are made new. And definitely if you're running into a lot of people finding that the demo doesn't work, please let us know what you're doing right now, because it's something that needs to be considered. As for the CircuitPython Essentials guide, you're saying that there's stuff in there that's not working, or you're saying you want to make sure that it does so that you can send people there? What?
No, yeah, in the Essentials guide, everything seems good. Everything that I've found seems good. The parts where there are still old code are in the downloads pages of the main guides for those boards.
Okay, yeah, there's always a link to what they originally shipped with, mostly because even when it doesn't work, we still get people who are like, I want to get that original program back, which is odd, but it is what it is. What we want is probably to get an updated version of it and have that posted. We still want to leave the link to the original,
right?
But what would be ideal is to have an updated version of it that we can then post to the downloads page and say, this is the demo that works with 5x or works, backwards compatible with everything 5x and before or latest. We could even say, and then at that point, we just want to make sure that we keep it updated so that it always works with latest. Yeah.
Yep, and that was my thought as well, was just getting a new one added to that download page. And I totally get leaving the old one there because I myself often will overwrite something and then I want to go back to it. I like that safety net. So definitely adding and not changing.
What, Charles?
I was about to say, when I got my first circuit playground, I encountered a problem that seems to have been taken care of the Essentials, and that is when I got my Circuit Playground. It still had 3x in it, and I upgraded to 4, and then the examples started failing because I didn't update the libraries that came along with the program. That's another thing that happens to a lot of people.
Right. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
They don't realize that they have to update in order to get the code to have any chance of working. It has to be, if you update the CircuitPython, you also have to update the community libraries and then the Adafruit libraries that are within that program.
So that's in every guide. Unfortunately, that means that people need to actually go through the guides.
They don't sometimes, and they don't realize that.
I know. But there's only so many places we can put it. That piece of information.
Yeah, I got to go for answer a question from somebody upstairs. So,
okay. Thanks, Charles.
But that was the only thing I had. I just wanted to say is I encountered a similar problem when I started using CircuitPython. I now know better, of course.
Yeah. So Foamy Guy, that would be excellent. I think that's something worth doing. Don't start it yet. Shoot me an email instead. So we can discuss what makes the most sense, because this is an issue that is present with a lot of the older boards that have been around for much longer, because obviously, the Feather NRF 52840, for example, I'm not even sure it shipped with CircuitPython, but let's just say it did for a second, is going to ship with a much more recent version, so far less issues. So there's only a few there's like a set of boards that obviously would have shipped with an older version and may have an older demo on them, and that would be what we would want to update. But shoot me an email instead of before getting started on it, so I can actually bring it up to Lamore and make sure that we're doing the best option for it, because she may have some ideas, or she may have demos, or she may already have something in line, and so I want to make sure we're not doubling up work.
I've got a couple ideas as well. One thing we've been bad about is simply making that demo code available. So we've been better with the downloads page, but we also have this repository for the default files. And the goal with that for me was to actually be able to just have the example files for every major version. We've been bad about maintaining that, but that's one option. And then we could also use that as a source for the stuff on the downloads page and the Learn Guides as well.
I agree.
The other thing we can think about as we go forward is, especially with the IMXRT, the UF2 bootloader actually has control over the whole flash. So we can start thinking about a world where UF2s can include the file system, even if there's an external SPI flash. It's something that's going to be easy for the IMXRT. It's going to be harder for these express boards that we have, where we use both internal and external flash. But that could be a solution as well, where we basically, for every release, we have both a just update CircuitPython UF2, but we could also potentially have a UF2 and redo my file system UF2 as well, which we could then bake in all of the example code updated along with the version that the UF2 has. It'd be easy on the IMXRT, but it'd be harder on the other stuff. But we just have to be careful to let people know that it will overwrite their file system. We could actually do it as two UF2s as well. We could have one for updating CircuitPython, and then we could have a second UF2 for just resetting the file system part.
Yeah, that's great insight into the new ones. And Kattni, like you mentioned, I will definitely get an email fired off to you guys before I get started on anything like that. So I think that covers my my topic.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Thank you all. We have one more. I'll read off and kind of respond to, and then we'll wrap up. So this is from D Cloud, who's text only. So I'll just start reading it off, and we can report in. It's kind of the first bullet point here is titled "Reflection on Controlling Raspberry Pi Hat or Bonnet with CircuitPython." I have a big collection of hats and bonnets from Pimoroni and others, and would like to use them with CircuitPython. I would like to write or reuse CircuitPython libraries to drive the hardware. Now, there's 3 options that they list here. Yes, we do want to talk about that, Jeff. So please add it in the notes. We can talk. I'll just read through it, and if we need to have more discussion, David, next week, we can as well. So there's 3 options here. 1, use Blink on the Raspberry Pi to access GPIO, I2C, and SPI. Which is great because the pin mapping already exists for Blink for Raspberry Pi. Option 2 is use a clue in the bit to Pi for Fortronics that maps clue to pin Raspberry Pi pinout, and the pin mapping is defined by bit to Pi. Option 3 is make a feather to 40 pin adapter that lets you plug in a hat on a feather. The pin mapping would need to be defined, but maybe somebody already has this accessory. How would you map feather to Raspberry Pi connector to be able to use Raspberry Pi hats as accessories for a feather? I think Blink is probably the best option, because that's like lots of people are using it that way already, so it's going to be the best supported. So I would say option 1 on that. And then let me just take a time code here. David says, I'm looking for an opinion or idea on what would be the right way to do the mapping. Is there already a board that maps feather pins to Raspberry Pi? Is it possible to have the same code working on those 3 options? Should I use a sandwich library to do some remapping or my own alias/naming? It's a good question. I'm going to keep reading. Maybe this could help just using existing Python adapters within CircuitPython with a link to... Oh, we're a little out of order here. There's another topic before we get to release scheduling. But David points out that there's both a Pimoroni CircuitPython adapter and a Pimoroni physical feather pins repos that do the mapping as well. It's an interesting idea to have a mapping between feather and the 40 pin Pi hat. I generally think people who are using hats also have Raspberry Pis, so that's probably the best option. It's going to be used the most as well. So that's kind of where I would go. Okay, let's keep rolling because we are running up against our hour and a half. So KJW has a topic. Thanks, David. I'm just going to read this off too, unless I don't think KJW has a mic.
Oh, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
So I've recently started using Display IO. It's all very new to me. I've not used any of the LCD displays before. Mm-hmm. Everything was going well, and then I sort of discovered something, at least initially, which looked like you turn an LED on and off, and it was taking a long time occasionally. So I logged it as a bug because I didn't have time to look into it at the time. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes evident that it's very Display IO related, right. And I was in REPL mode at the time, and I was leaving it scrolling away, and you can kind of see on the device on the clue that the Display IO is quite a slow scrolling process.
Yep.
And then you can even time it if you turn the auto refresh off. Mm-hmm. You can time it, and you're seeing these big delays. So I was kind of curious if the analysis was correct. So it looks like Display IO will kick in potentially between any Python statements.
Correct.
With quite a long delay. So the measurements I was seeing in this case were, I think, 383 and 275 milliseconds. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, initially I was thinking, okay, perhaps that's just the way it is. But I'd also seen, I've seen the color sensor fail and where it kind of gets stuck. And I hadn't looked into that. And I think Foamy Guy mentioned he'd seen it once as well. And it sort of made me wonder if potentially you've got Python code doing I2C operations. So it could be talking down the I2C bus, and then you could get this 300 millisecond pause, which might interrupt the I2C conversation enough. Most code is going to be expecting 1 millisecond, 2 milliseconds. I don't know how long the GC kind of goes for, but I think these very long pauses are going to perhaps surprise some code.
Yeah. I'll get back to you on the issue. I saw that and I do want to get back to it. I think generally this is why we try to emphasize to people that the Python code is not timing reliable. We hope to provide C functions and C modules for timing reliable stuff, but as you found out, like in the VM, we run what we think of as background tasks. The display is one of the major hogs. If you're playing audio back, you'll get that, and the GC can be it as well. I think it's something that we just need to code around from the Python side. I'm not sure that there's a way that we could actually make it faster. So like the REPL showing up on the screen, the reason it's slow is because it's having to do like a full screen refresh over SPI, because you've scrolled the entire display, and that is slow. So hundreds of milliseconds seems quite long to me. Maybe there's some bug there that could make it faster, but the reality is that I think like you never actually know the timing of the CircuitPython code. That being said as well, Lamore and Dan did find this issue that might be related to this, where allocations were growing linearly every allocation, the allocation time was. And they had a type loop that was just reading an I2C sensor, and the issue was that it was only allocating multi-block allocations, and there was an optimization where the base pointer where it starts to look in the heap never gets moved as the scanning happens. So I would make sure that you're on RC1 or later. Because we did add an optimization for loops that allocate more than a single block, or loops that never allocate a single block. And we did see it grow between 1 and 10 milliseconds, so that could be related.
This was just in the REPL, so it wasn't a loop. It was just, it would look like display refresh for...
I mean, if you're
REPL update.
I mean, if you're printing a long time, you're updating a frame it's trying to hit 60. So yeah, we could take a look at it, but it doesn't actually surprise me.
Yep.
And the speed of the display will impact that as well. So you could actually, one thing to try is you could reinitialize the display at different SPI speeds and like see how that time varies. Could be interesting.
And there are various ways to turn off the REPL, such as putting a blank group or releasing the display. Right. And that'll also help you confirm this theory that it is the display background task.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't refute that. I totally believe the display is a hog, but it's also super valuable to have stuff show up there. So yeah, sorry that's not one concrete answer, but it's a trade-off. All right, let's Dan, do you want to talk about the release quickly?
Yeah, I think the question is when we would declare it baked.
Right.
And because we have RC1 now, we haven't heard of any issues with this, and so the question is how long to wait for people to download it and try things until we declare it done. Does anybody have any
objections to us releasing 5.0?
No.
Kind of what I like the idea of doing it early in the week, because I assume that we'll find issues and we'll just do a 5.1 and a 5.01, 5.02.
Right. Lamore pointed out earlier to us today that what happens is that nobody downloads it until it's no longer a pre-release, and then everybody does, and then we have to do a 5.01 and a 5.02.
Right.
So I would be perfectly happy to do it like in the next hour or something, or tonight or something. So
yeah. Does that scare anybody?
Oh, everybody is happy.
We don't scare easily.
You're all living on the edge anyway.
All right, I will. All I have to do is write up the release notes, so I'll do that. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay. All right.
We'll have all week to get sucked into bugs, but that's fine.
Yeah.
It'll be good to get people off 4 or 5.0. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah. Okay. I'll work on that first.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay.
And with that, thank you, everybody. Uh-oh. Jerry, do you have any concerns? Or are you just along for the ride?
No, it just took me too long to find the icon, emoticon.
Okay.
No problem at all.
All right, cool. Yeah. You had me worried a little bit there, Jerry. Okay. With that, thank you, everybody, for coming to the meeting today. It's been wonderful to talk with you all. If you're listening to this after the fact, you probably found it on youtube.com/Adafruit or podcast services as an audio thing. If you don't want to listen to the whole hour and a half, it tends to be, there are notes along with that you can check out and... sorry, distracted. Notes along with that can get you through the video to the parts that you want to see. This meeting happens on Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern on the Adafruit Discord, which you can join all week by going to the URL adafru.it/discord. That will hop you in there, drop into the CircuitPython channel and say hi. If you want to get notified about the note stock for the next week's meeting, or if the meeting has been shifted, if there are U.S. holidays, we tend to shift them around because many of us are in the U.S. If you want to be a part of that and get notified, let us know you'd like to be a CircuitPythonista on the Discord. It will make your name blue, or not blue. I'm staring at it and it's purple. It will make your name purple, and you'll get notified there. You can always ask to be removed as well. And so let us know, and then you can follow along with everything. In general, we encourage everybody to attend and participate. We love to hear what you're working on. So please let us know and join us next week, normal time, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern on the Discord. And with that, we'll talk to y'all all week in the Discord chat. Try out 5.0 and we'll see what happens. But just thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, everybody.
See you later.